The grainy footage from the street camera outside Murphy's Tavern in Birmingham, Alabama, captured it all like a nightmare frozen in time. This incident took place back in 2020, a year when tensions simmered just below the surface in the heart of the South. Imagine this a humid summer night, the air thick with the smell of spilled beer and exhaust fumes from passing cars. Shouts echo through the dimly lit parking lot as two men clash fists, punches flying, grunts of pain cutting the stillness. Then, out of nowhere, a tall, broad-shouldered figure steps in, his voice booming like thunder. "Nof, break it up before someone gets hurt." That's Theodore Clayton, a 60-year-old retired laborer, his salt and pepper hair cropped short, his weathered face etched with lines from decades of hard work under the Alabama sun. His dark skin glistens with sweat, his calloused hands raised in a gesture of peace. But one of the fighters, a burly young white man with a buzz cut and a tattoo peeking from his sleeve, sneers and shoves him back. "Mind your own business, old man." The other guy, a local mechanic named Jamal Reeves, backs away, wiping blood from his lip. Theodore doesn't flinch. He's seen worse in his days as a Vietnam vet, dodging bullets in jungles far from home. He grabs the aggressor's arm, trying to de-escalate. "Son, this ain't worth it. Walk away." The young man yanks free, his face twisting in rage. "You touch me again, and you're done." The scuffle intensifies, bodies slamming against a parked truck, the metallic thud reverberating. Horns blare from the street as onlookers pull out their phones. Theodore positions himself between them, his heart pounding, not from fear, but from that old sense of duty, the kind that kept him alive in the war. Why did he get involved? Was it instinct, or something deeper bubbling up from a lifetime of being pushed around? The camera angle shifts slightly, catching the neon sign flickering above the bar door. 4 minutes. That's all it took for the sirens to wail in the distance. Blue lights flash, tires screech to a halt. Two officers burst from the patrol car. Deputy Harlan Brooks, a stocky man in his 40s with a mustache and a no-nonsense glare, and his partner, Officer Lena Torres, younger with sharp eyes scanning the scene. They charge in, batons at the ready. "Hands up, everyone on the ground," Brooks bellows. The young white fighter, panting and bruised, points at Theodore. "He started it, assaulted me." Jamal shakes his head, but before he can speak, Brooks is on Theodore, twisting his arm behind his back. Click, the handcuffs snap shut, cold metal biting into his wrists. Theodore winces, his knees buckling as he's forced to the pavement. "What the? I was breaking it up." He protests, his voice steady but laced with disbelief. Torres glances at the young man, who straightens up, almost smirking. No cuffs for him. No questions. Just a pat on the back. "You all right, kid?" Brooks asks him. The camera picks up the exchange. Clearly the young man nods. "Yeah, thanks, Uncle Harlan. Deputy." "Wait, Uncle." The pieces start falling into place, but Theodore doesn't know yet. He's hauled to his feet, shoved toward the cruiser, the gravel scraping his shoes. Jamal tries to intervene. Officers, he didn't. But Torres waves him off. "Stay out of it, or you're next." The door slams shut, Theodore's face pressed against the window, his breath fogging the glass. What was supposed to be a quick stop for a beer after visiting his granddaughter turns into this. As the car pulls away, the street camera lingers on the bar's entrance, where the young man lights a cigarette, laughing with the officers before they drive off. But here's the hook: that lost bodycam footage. It wasn't the only eye in the sky. Something else captured the truth, and it would unravel everything. Would justice even listen? The cruiser smelled of old coffee, vinyl seats, and the faint metallic tang of sweat and fear. Theodore Clayton sat in the back, wrists aching from the too tight cuffs, his broad shoulders hunched against the hard plastic partition. Every bump in the Birmingham streets sent a jolt through his ribs, already sore from the scuffle. He stared out the window at the passing neon signs and brick facades of 20th Street North, places he'd walked for 40 years. This wasn't his first ride in a police car, but it was the first time he felt like the whole world had turned its back on him in 4 short minutes. Deputy Harlan Brooks kept glancing in the rearview mirror, not with concern, but with something colder. "You like playing hero, old man?" he finally said, voice low and mocking. Theodore met his eyes in the reflection. "I like keeping fools from killing each other. That a crime now?" Brooks snorted. "Depends who the fool is." Officer Torres, riding shotgun, stayed quiet, but her fingers drummed nervously on her knee. She'd seen the young white fighters smirk when they pulled up. She'd heard the word Uncle Harlan. She knew exactly whose nephew that was, Sheriff Clayton. Clay, Whitaker's only son, Travis Whitaker, 28 years old, known around certain bars for starting fights and walking away clean. Theodore didn't know any of that yet. All he knew was the ache spreading across his chest and the growing certainty that something was deeply wrong. Back at Murphy's Tavern, the crowd had already started to thin. Jamal Reeves stood under the flickering neon, still holding a bar rag to his split lip, talking fast to a couple of regulars who'd pulled out their phones. Man, they didn't even ask questions. Just took the old man, you see that? One of the bystanders, a heavyset woman named Miss Pearl who worked the night shift at the steel mill, nodded slowly. I recorded some of it. Not much, but enough to show he was the one trying to stop it. Jamal's eyes lit up. Send it to me. Right now. By the time Theodore reached the Jefferson County Jail intake, the night had turned cooler, but the air inside the booking area felt suffocating. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of bleach and unwashed bodies hit him like a wall. A corrections officer, younger than Theodore's youngest daughter, barked orders. She's off. Belt. Empty pockets. Theodore complied slowly, every movement careful. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the deep, burning anger he was trying to keep contained. He'd served 2 tours in Vietnam. He'd buried friends. He'd raised 3 kids on minimum wage jobs and sheer stubbornness. And now this. They took his wedding ring, the one he still wore even though Esther had passed 8 years earlier. That hurt more than the cuffs. I want to call my daughter, he said quietly. The officer didn't even look up. You'll get your phone call when we're done processing. Processing took 2 hours. By the time they walked him to the holding cell, Theodore's legs felt heavy, his breathing shallow. 3 other men were already inside a skinny kid barely 20, a middle-aged man sleeping on the bench, and a big guy with prison tattoos who eyed Theodore like fresh meat. They put him in anyway. The door clanged shut. The fluorescent hum was the only sound for a long minute. Then the big guy spoke. What they get you for pops? Theodore leaned against the wall, trying to find a position that didn't hurt his side. Breaking up a fight that wasn't mine. The man chuckled darkly. Yeah, they'll do it around here. Around 1:17 a.m., according to the wall clock, the cell door opened again. 2 corrections officers stepped in, different ones this time. Bigger, meaner. One carried a baton, the other had his hand resting on his taser. Clayton, the first one, said, "Step out." Theodore pushed himself upright, wincing. What for? Medical check. The second one answered, too quick. The other inmates looked away. They knew what medical check meant at 1 a.m. in this facility. Theodore stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind him. They walked him down a dim corridor, past empty cells, to a small room with no camera, no window to the outside. Just concrete, a metal table bolted to the floor, and a single flickering bulb. Sit, the first officer ordered. Theodore sat. That was when the first punch landed, hard just under the ribs on his left side. Air exploded from his lungs. He doubled over. The second officer grabbed his shoulders, holding him upright for the next blow. And the next. 3 ribs cracked like dry twigs. Theodore didn't scream. He'd learned long ago that screaming only made it worse. He gritted his teeth, tasted blood, thought of his granddaughter's laugh, thought of Esther's voice telling him to keep standing tall. Teddy. When it was over, they dragged him back to the cell and dumped him on the floor like trash. The big guy with the tattoos helped him sit up against the wall. Breathe slow, old man. Slow. Theodore nodded, each breath like knives. He didn't sleep that night. He just sat there, staring at the cinder block wall, replaying every second of the evening, wondering how a man could go from trying to do right to lying broken on a jailhouse floor in less than 6 hours. Morning came slow. When his daughter, Renee, finally got the call at 7:42 a.m. and rushed down to the jail, the desk sergeant told her Theodore was unavailable for visitation. When she demanded to know why, the sergeant leaned forward and said, very quietly, because we lost the bodycam footage from last night. Both units. Technical malfunction. Renee felt the floor tilt under her. She knew what that meant. Everyone in Birmingham knew what lost footage usually meant. But what the sergeant didn't know, what no one in that building knew yet, was that Murphy's Tavern had a working security camera mounted above the front door. and Miss Pearl had already sent the clip to Jamal, who had already forwarded it to 3 different people, including a local activist who still had contacts at Channel 13 News. The truth wasn't lost. It was just waiting for the right moment to surface. And when it did, it would burn. Type justice in the comments if you believe a man shouldn't be beaten half to death for trying to stop a fight. Have you ever seen someone get blamed for breaking up someone else's mess? Drop your story below. Theodore Clayton lay on the thin jailhouse mattress that morning, every shallow breath a reminder of the night before. His mind wandered back, not to the bar fight, but further, decades deep into memories that shaped a man who couldn't just walk away from trouble. Why did he step in? It wasn't just instinct, it was a lifetime of triggers buried like landmines in his soul. Back in 1968, as a 18-year-old kid from Birmingham's Ensley neighborhood, Theodore shipped out to Vietnam. Drafted. No choice. He remembered the jungle heat thicker than Alabama summers, the constant drip of rain on broad leaves, the metallic click of loading an M16. His platoon sergeant, a grizzled white man from Georgia named Sjeet, Harlan, funny how names echoed, had pulled him aside one night. "Boy, you watch my back, I watch yours. That's how we survive this hell." Theodore did, saved the sergeant's life during an ambush near Da Nang, dragging him through mud and gunfire while bullets whizzed like angry hornets. But when they got home, no parade, no thanks, just stares in the airport, whispers of "baby killer" from crowds who didn't know the half of it. Theodore came back to a city still smoldering from civil rights marches, to a father who worked the steel mills until his lungs gave out, to a mother who prayed every night for her boys to make it home safe. He married Esther in '72, started at the U.S. steel plant, swinging hammers and breathing in dust that coated his throat like ash. 3 kids: Renee, the oldest, now a nurse; Marcus, who joined the army and never came back whole; and little Tia, who gave him his granddaughter, the light of his fading years. But the jobs dried up, plants closed, pensions shrunk. Theodore retired at 58, his body broken from labor, his VA checks barely covering the bills. He volunteered at the community center, teaching kids about history, the real kind, not the sanitized books. Stand up for what's right, he'd tell them, his voice gravelly from years of shouting over machinery. Even when it hurts. That night at Murphy's Tavern, it was supposed to be simple. He'd stopped by after dropping off groceries for Renee, heard the shouts from the parking lot, saw the 2 men: Jamal Reeves, a black mechanic from the neighborhood, hardworking like him, and Travis Wheataker, the white kid with the entitled glare swinging wild. Theodore's blood boiled, not just at the fight, but at the imbalance he saw every day. Why did some walk free while others got crushed? Flashback to AFFV pulled over for driving while black on I-65, headlights blinding, officers' hands on holsters. "Where you headed, boy?" one asked, even though Theodore was 35, a father. They searched his car, found nothing, left him shaking on the roadside. Esther held him that night as he stared at the ceiling. "Teddy, you can't fight the world alone." But he did. Small ways. Speaking up at town halls about police funding. Marching in protests after yet another shooting. His internal monologue that night at the bar: not again. Not letting this kid get hurt like Marcus did in some senseless brawl. Marcus had come home from Iraq in '08, PTSD eating him alive, until a bar fight turned deadly. Not his fault, but the system said otherwise. Probation. Lost jobs. Theodore couldn't save his son, but maybe he could save these 2 fools. As he stepped between them, his heart raced with that old mix of fear and fury. The shove from Travis hit like a trigger, pulling him back to every slight, every boy thrown his way. "You ain't nothing." Travis spat, and Theodore heard echoes of foremen, cops, even that sergeant who forgot his name once stateside. But here's the twist no one saw coming: Travis Whitaker wasn't just any hothead. He was Sheriff Whitaker's son, sure, but deeper. Travis had a record scrubbed clean. DUIs vanished. Assault charges dropped. And that night, the fight started because Jamal called him out on skipping a tab, but Travis swung first, high on something stronger than beer. Lab reports later would show cocaine in his system, but that came out only because of a whisper from inside the department. Officer Lena Torres, the partner, had her own motives. A Latina woman in a mostly white force, she'd joined to make change, but 5 years in, she saw the rot. Covering for the sheriff's kid, it ate at her. That night, as they drove Theodore away, her internal thoughts churned. This ain't right. Harlan's protecting family, but what about justice? She didn't speak up then. Regret would come later. Back in the jail cell, Theodore's mind looped. Why me? Always me. But beneath the pain, a spark. He'd survived worse. And unknown to him, Renee wasn't stopping at the desk sergeant. She'd called her cousin, a lawyer at the NAACP branch in Birmingham. Auntie. They beat Daddy. Lost footage. Bull. The cousin, Elijah Grant, sharp-suited and sharper-minded, started digging. He knew the sheriff's office like the back of his hand. Corruption rumors swirled for years. Whitaker's family had run Jefferson County law enforcement since the 80s, a dynasty built on favors and fear. Elijah's flashback, his own father arrested in '92 for protesting poll taxes, beaten in a cell much like this one. We fight smart now? Elijah thought. He pulled strings, got the bail process started. But the real trigger, that street camera footage. Miss Pearl's clip showed it all. Theodore intervening peacefully, Travis escalating, the officers arriving and zeroing in on the black man while patting the white one on the back. No audio, but the visuals screamed by us. Jamal had sent it to Elijah by 9 a.m. This changes everything, Elijah muttered, forwarding it to a contact at the FBI's Civil Rights Division. The feds had been watching Whitaker for months. Kickbacks, evidence tampering. It could be the spark. Theodore didn't know any of this as he was finally released on bail at noon, ribs taped by a reluctant jail nurse. He stepped into the sunlight, Renee rushing to hug him gently. Daddy, what happened? He managed a weak smile. System happened, baby, like always. But inside, his thoughts darkened. If they think this breaks me, they forgot who I am. The motives ran deep, personal, systemic, generational. And the triggers. They were about to pull something bigger than a bar fight. The holding cell door had barely closed behind Theodore when the escalation hit like a freight train. But let's rewind those 4 crucial minutes outside Murphy's Tavern, piece together from that lost body cam footage that wasn't so lost after all, thanks to the street camera's unblinking eye. It started at 10:32 p.m. on that sticky July night in 2020. The air hung heavy with the scent of rain, soaked asphalt, and cheap whiskey spilling from the bar's open door. Theodore Clayton, his work boots crunching gravel, had just parked his old Ford pickup when the shouts pierced the humid dusk. "You owe me, man!" "Pay up!" Jamal Reeves' voice, edged with frustration, cut through the parking lot. Travis Whitaker, red-faced and swaying slightly, laughed it off. "Make me grease monkey." That's when the first punch flew, Travis's fist connecting with Jamal's jaw, a sickening crack like wood splitting. Jamal staggered back, blood trickling from his lip, but he swung back, catching Travis in the gut. Grunts echoed, bodies slamming against a rusted Chevy, the metallic thud vibrating through the ground. Theodore froze for a split second, his pulse thundering in his ears like incoming artillery from his Vietnam days. The smell of sweat and anger hit him hard. "Not on my watch," he muttered to himself, striding forward with purpose. His broad frame cast a long shadow under the sodium lights. "Hey, break it up!" His voice boomed deep and authoritative, hands outstretched like barriers. Travis wheeled around, eyes wild. "Stay out of it, Env." He caught himself, but the slur hung unspoken in the air, thick as smog. Theodore stepped closer, grabbing Travis's arm mid-swing. "Son, you're done. Walk away before the cops show." Jamal, breathing heavy, nodded gratefully. "He's right, man. Let's just..." But Travis shoved Theodore hard, chest to chest, the force sending him back a step. "Touch me again, and I'll lay you out." The camera caught it all. Theodore's calm face versus Travis's snarling rage. No aggression from the old man, just de-escalation. Then, sirens wailed, growing louder, blue and red lights painting the lot in strobes. Tires screeched, Deputy Harlan Brooks' cruiser skidding to a halt at 10:36 p.m. Brooks burst out first, bait and drawn, his mustache twitching with adrenaline. Officer Lena Torres followed, hand on her holster, eyes darting. "Hands where I can see, M! All of you!" Brooks yelled, charging in. The street cam showed Brooks zeroing in on Theodore immediately, even as Travis straightened his shirt and stepped back. "He assaulted me!" Travis pointed, voice suddenly steady. Jamal protested. No, he was helping. But Brooks was already on Theodore, twisting his arm with a grunt. Now. Theodore complied, knees hitting gravel, sharp stones biting through his jeans. Click, the cuffs snapped on, too tight, pinching skin. "What the hell?" "I was stopping the fight." Theodore's voice rose, laced with confusion and rising anger. The cam captured Brooks' face close to Theodore's. Should it, or it'll get worse. Torres stood by, her body cam rolling, or so they thought. She glanced at Travis, who nodded subtly. "You okay, Travis?" Brooks asked, voice softening. Yeah, Uncle Deputy, thanks. The slip was there, clear as day on the audio that would later surface. No cuffs for Travis. No questions for Jamal beyond a curt go home. Instead, Brooks hauled Theodore up, shoving him toward the cruiser. The old man's ribs already ached from the earlier shove, but he held his tongue, breath coming in short bursts. This ain't right, he said quietly as the door slammed. Inside the bar, patrons peered out, murmurs rising. Miss Pearl, behind the counter, had hit record on her phone just as the cops arrived. But the street cam was the goldmine wide angle, showing Brooks in frame the whole time, his actions deliberate, his partner hesitant but compliant. Escalation peaked at booking, 11:15 p.m. The intake room reeked of stale coffee and desperation. Theodore stood chained to the bench, watching as Brooks whispered to the sergeant. Row 1. Resisted. Lies, but who would question? By midnight, the medical check room, the two corrections officers, identified later as buddies of Brooks, entered with purpose. First blow, a knee to the gut, air whooshing out. Theodore crumpled. Resisting, ha, one sneered. Second boot to the ribs, crack, one gone. He gasped, vision blurring. Third fist to the side, two more fractures. Pain exploded like fireworks. Hot and blinding, they laughed low, dragging him back. Learn your place. Theodore's thoughts screamed. Why? For being black. For being old. For existing, blood in his mouth, metallic and warm. He curled on the floor, the cold concrete seeping into his bones. But even in agony, a fire kindled. Defiance. Back at the bar, Jamal paced, phone in hand. We gotta do something. Miss Pearl nodded. Already sent the clip to my nephew at the news. The footage spread like wildfire underground, shared in group chats, emailed to activists. By 2 a.m., Elijah Grant had it, his jaw clenching. This is textbook. Excessive force, nepotism, cover up. Torres, alone in her apartment later, replayed her body cam in her mind. Wait, why was it malfunctioning? She knew Brooks had tampered. Guilt gnawed. I should have said something. The escalation wasn't just physical, it was systemic, a chain reaction of bias igniting in seconds. But the peak, when that street cam video hit the desk of a federal agent at dawn. We've got M, the agent whispered. The dominoes were falling. Let me know in the comments, have you ever witnessed cops picking sides in a fight? What happened next? The hospital room at UAB Medical Center smelled of antiseptic and faint bleach, a sterile contrast to the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. Theodore Clayton lay on the crisp white sheets, IV drip beeping steadily, his taped ribs throbbing with every breath. Released on bail at noon the next day, July 15, 2020, he'd collapsed in Renee's car on the way home, pain radiating like fire through his chest. Daddy, hold on, she'd whispered, flooring it to the ER. X-rays confirmed 3 fractured ribs, internal bruising, a hairline crack in his sternum. Doctors shook their heads. This looks like more than a fall. Renee paced the hallway, her nurse's scrubs still on from her shift, tears streaking her face. They did this. In jail. For nothing. Her mind raced. How could a simple night out end like this? Theodore, the rock of their family, reduced to this bed. Immediate consequences rippled out like shockwaves. At home in their modest brick house on 6th Avenue North, Tia watched her daughter play with blocks. But her thoughts were on Grandpa. He always fixes things, she told her husband over the phone. Know who's fixing him? Bills would pile up. VA wouldn't cover all this, and Theodore's pension was stretched thin. Lost work? He volunteered, but now even that was out. The physical toll was brutal nights of shallow breaths, painkillers blurring his edges, the constant ache reminding him of vulnerability he hadn't felt since the war. Emotionally, devastation. Theodore stared at the ceiling tiles, questioning everything. Was it worth it? Stepping in? Doubt crept in, mixed with rage at a system that chewed up good men. Jamal Reeves felt the weight too. Back at his auto shop on Grayman Avenue, tools clattered as he worked, but his split lip wasn't the issue. Guilt gnawed. If I hadn't argued over that tab, he closed early, drove to the Clayton house with a fruit basket, sat with Renee. Your dad saved my ass. I owe him. But the chaos didn't stop there. Whispers spread through Birmingham's black communities. Ensley, Titusville, West End. Another brother beaten for being in the wrong place. Group chats buzzed, protests brewed. At Murphy's Tavern, business dipped. Regulars boycotted after hearing about the lost footage. Miss Pearl quit her shift job, too angry to serve the same crowd. Ain't right, she told her friends. Officer Lena Torres tossed in her bed that night, the scene replaying Brooks' rough handling, the whispers with Travis. her career flashed. 5 years climbing ranks, now tainted. If I speak up, I'm done. But silence ate at her soul, Deputy Harlan Brooks. He laughed it off at the sheriff's barbecue that afternoon, slapping Travis on the back, handled that quick, but unease flickered rumors of a video. Sheriff Whitaker in his oak paneled office fielded calls. Clay, what happened last night, he downplayed. Routine arrest. But the feds were already sniffing. Elijah Grant's NAACP office became ground zero. Phones rang off the hook, tips, outrage. This ain't isolated, he told a reporter anonymously. Pattern of abuse. The video clip, it went viral underground by evening, shared on Facebook groups, texted chains. Views hit thousands. Comments poured, racist pigs. Justice for Theodore. Protests formed outside the jail by dusk. Signs reading, no more lost footage. Chants echoed through downtown, horns honking in support. Media picked up Channel 13 ran a segment at 6 p.m., blurred clip playing. Alleged excessive force in veteran arrest. Theodore watched from his hospital bed, remote in hand. Pride swelled amid the pain. Maybe it'll change something. But consequences cut deep, families fractured, trust eroded. Renee quit her double shifts to care for him, stress lines deepening. Marcus, his son, called from Atlanta, "Dad, I'm coming home. We fight this." The old man's defiance reignited. Questions burned. How many more? Lost cases. Why protect the guilty? The chaos exposed cracks in the system, lives upended in a single night. But from the ashes, something stirred. Accountability, perhaps. Or just more pain. The precinct buzzed like a hornet's nest stirred up, fluorescent lights flickering over desks piled with reports and cold coffee cups. It was July 16, 2020, the day after Theodore Clayton's release, and the investigation kicked off quietly at first, like a whisper in a storm. But revelations, they came crashing in, twisting the narrative like a knife in the gut. Elijah Grant, that NAACP lawyer, sat in his cramped office on 3rd Avenue North, laptop glowing with the street cam footage. "This is dynamite," he muttered, replaying the clip. Brooks cuffing Theodore while Travis smirked, the Uncle Harlan, slip audible in enhanced audio someone had cleaned up overnight. Elijah's team dug deeper. Public records showed Travis's history, 3 prior assaults, all dismissed. Sheriff's kid gets a pass. Elijah thought, anger simmering. He filed a formal complaint with the Jefferson County DA's office by 10 a.m., attaching the video. Civil rights violation. Excessive force. The DA, a no-nonsense woman named Carla Jenkins, watched it in her chambers, her face hardening. Get internal affairs on this. But IA was Whitaker's turf. Lieutenant Ray Simmons, leading the probe, started with interviews. First Officer Lena Torres. She showed up pale, hands fidgeting. "What happened out there?" Simmons asked, recorder rolling. Torres hesitated, her mind flashing to the cruiser ride. Brooks' glare. Deputy Brooks, he knew the suspect. Travis Whitaker, his nephew. Boom, first revelation. Simmons leaned in. And the body cams? Malfunctioned. Both. But Torres cracked. I think Brooks turned them off. Guilt poured out. She'd seen him fiddle with the unit's post-arrest. Evidence tampering. Simmons nodded, hiding his shock. "We'll need your statement." Torres left shaken, but lighter. Finally did right, she thought. Next, corrections officers involved in the medical check. They stonewalled. Clayton slipped in the cell. But hospital records contradicted. Bruises patterned like boots, not a fall. Elijah subpoenaed jail logs, no medical entry until morning. Twist one officer, a rookie named Derek Hale, whispered to Simmons off record. It was orders. From above. Teach him respect. Above meant Whitaker. The sheriff's dynasty unraveled thread by thread. Feds entered quietly. Agent Maria Lopez from the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, tipped by Elijah. She reviewed the video at a downtown cafe, away from prying eyes. Pattern here, she said to her partner. DOJ had files on Whitaker, kickbacks from private prisons, racial profiling stats sky, high in Birmingham stops. Black drivers pulled over 3x more than white. Theodore's case, the match to the powder keg, revelations deepened emotions, community outrage boiled. Protests swelled to hundreds outside the courthouse by noon, chants of "Justice for Clayton," echoing off marble steps. Media frenzy CNN picked it up, interviewing Renee. "My daddy fought for this country. Now it fights him." Tears streamed, viewers felt the gut punch. Theodore, from his hospital bed, watched on a tablet Renee brought. Pride mixed with sorrow. Didn't think it'd go this far, but inside, hope flickered, maybe the system could bend. Twists piled on, lab results from Travis's blood draw, forced by a judge Elijah knew. Cocaine positive. He was high as a kite, the tech reported. Motive for the fight. Not just a tab. Travis owed Jamal for side work, code for drugs. Jamal came clean to Elijah. Didn't want to say, but yeah. Another layer, Brooks' personnel file, leaked anonymously Taurus. Domestic violence complaints dismissed. Pattern of abuse, Lopez noted. The investigation exposed rot. Depositions rolled in. Miss Pearl testified, saw it all from the bar. Her phone clip corroborated the street cam. Onlookers added voices. Cops ignored the white boy. Emotions peaked at a town hall that evening. Whittaker faced the crowd, sweating under lights. Internal matter, he blustered. Boos erupted. A veteran stood. I served with men like Clayton. Shame on you! Whittaker stormed off, but damage done. Revelations hit home. Theodore's family gathered in the hospital room, sharing stories. Marcus drove in, hugging his dad gingerly. We're with you. Catharsis amid pain, bonds strengthened. But the biggest twist, a whistleblower email to Lopez. Jail had backup cams, lost body cams. Hidden server held footage of the beating. Officers in frame, faces clear. Lopez smiled grimly.
Gotcha.
The noose tightened. Deeper emotions surfaced, betrayal, resilience. Theodore whispered to Renee, this ain't just about me, it's for all of us. The investigation wasn't over, but revelations promised a reckoning. What would you do if you found out the cops were covering for family? Share in the comments below. The courtroom in the Jefferson County Courthouse was packed that crisp October morning in 2021, the air thick with tension and the faint scent of polished wood and desperation. Theodore Clayton sat at the plaintiff's table, his ribs healed, but the scars deeper, invisible ones that twisted his sleep into nightmares. The trial had dragged on for months, revelations piling up like evidence in a landslide. By then, the federal probe had blown the lid off Sheriff Whittaker's operation. Indictments for corruption, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. Deputy Harlan Brooks faced the music first, charged with assault, falsifying reports, and conspiracy. Officer Lena Torres turned state's witness, her testimony damning. I saw Brooks disable the cams. He ordered the beating. The jury, a mix of black and white faces from Birmingham's diverse corners, leaned forward as the street cam footage played on the big screen, silent but screaming injustice. Travis Whittaker, he copped a plea for assault and possession. 6 months in county, his daddy's pull finally snapped like a brittle branch. The corrections officers got 2 years each, their medical check exposed as torture. But the real justice, for Theodore, it came when Judge Harlan, irony in the name, banged the gavel, guilty on all counts. Brooks got 5 years federal time. Whittaker resigned in disgrace. His dynasty crumbled. The department overhauled mandatory bodycam audits, bias training, a civilian review board. By 2022, settlements rolled in. $1.2 million for Theodore, funneled into community funds for veterans and legal aid. Long-term effects rippled wide. Theodore became a quiet hero in Birmingham's black communities. Speaking at events, his voice steady. Systems broken, but we can mend it. Renee opened a clinic with part of the money, helping folks like her dad. Marcus found purpose advocating for vets' rights. Protests evolved into policy wins, fewer lost footages, more accountability. But criticism lingered, sharp and necessary. How many cases slipped through before this one? The system protected its own, nepotism like a cancer-eating trust. Justice delayed is justice denied. Elijah Grant said in interviews, on for black men in the South, it's often denied outright. Theodore felt the catharsis, but anger simmered. They took my dignity that night. Money don't buy it back. By 2023, Birmingham saw a 20% drop in excessive force complaints, but nationally, echoes in other cities, sparking reforms. Theodore retired fully, spending days with his granddaughter, teaching her, stand tall even when they try to knock you down. The case closed in 2024, appeals exhausted, but the hook? What if that street cam hadn't caught it? How many Theodores are still out there, broken and forgotten? If this story hit close to home, type "system failed" in the comments and share why. What reforms do you think we need most? Hit that subscribe button for more true, crime-inspired stories that expose the fight for justice. New episodes every day!